and gentlemen, boys and squirrels, welcome to David and Alex's Totally Rad podcast. That's totally not a podcast. We're your host. I'm Alex, and this
guy's David.
This guy's David. We are mentors, actors, and all-around advocates of diversity. We're on a journey to find others like us who may be a little different and have used their uniqueness to become mega mentors and role models for us here at Camp No Limits. So tune in with us as we deep dive into getting to know some of these superstars.
All right. A-Town Barone, how you doing? This is so cool. It's the second time we've done this. Pretty sweet. I'm excited.
Second time we've ever worn these Hawaiian shirts together, David Arrow.
It's the second time, but you know what? They still look good. I'm so excited to do a second podcast. Our first one was so great. Big thanks to Nate Smits for being our first guest. Very excited about our second guest, though. Not going to disappoint. We'll get to our second guest in a minute, but Alex, of course, to have a Totally Not podcast, we've got to have Totally Not sponsors. So let's go ahead and thank some sponsors real quick for helping us provide this Totally Not a podcast.
Let's do that. But let me ask you a question first, David. Have you ever been chatting with someone whose breath smells like a dead butt?
Yes, I do that often.
But you're such a nice guy that you don't want to say anything in the conversation, and the conversation just keeps going and going until all of a sudden you feel a little lightheaded, right?
Absolutely, like I'm going to pass out and or throw up.
Yeah, which would be horrible. But ladies and gentlemen, don't let that person be you. All right, today's sponsor is toothpaste. Not just any brand of toothpaste, but all brands of toothpaste, all of them. You got to use it 2 to 3 times a day for the freshest breath. All right, don't let that person be you. Don't smell like bad butt. Use toothpaste.
Use toothpaste. Thank you, Toothpaste, for supporting this Totally Not a podcast. And, real quick, Alex, I don't know about you. We're probably not going to go to a sporting event in the future, but you may. But maybe you want to go to cheer on the World Cup. There's not going to be fans in the stadium, but you're at your TV, or maybe you're just really having a good day and you want to expound some energy out into the world. Well, look no further than Roy's guttural yelling. Now, Roy has decades of experience, and he has mastered the fine art of guttural yelling in a way that's perfectly healthy, both mentally and emotionally. So if you want to work on your guttural yell, call 1-800-ROY-YELLS for your quick tutorial in guttural yelling. It's a joy to yell like Roy. Thank you, Roy's Guttural Yelling, for the sponsoring of this Not a Podcast. Now, Alex, I don't know about you, but probably I'm ready to get right to our next guest.
Let's just jump in. Let's just jump
right in. Ladies and gentlemen, this guest you may know. She's a mentor here at Camp No Limits. Probably the best laugh at Camp No Limits. So let's get to meet our guest, Miss Justine Clifton. So, Justine, here she comes, ladies and gentlemen. There she is!
Hey!
Justine!
How are you guys?
Welcome to David and Alex's Totally Rad podcast. That is totally not a podcast.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being our second guest. It's a pretty big title.
Justine, just said the curls are looking beautiful.
Thank you.
Curls.
That's it right there, ladies and gentlemen. As I said, like maybe the best laugh at Camp No Limits. You hear the laugh from literally miles away.
I was gonna say it's probably the loudest one, at least.
Yes, you could be potentially in a different state and still hear the laugh, and you're going to go and have a good time. So,
potentially.
Justine, thanks for joining us again. Just to start real quick, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and things like that.
Well, right now I live in Florida. I was born in Illinois, and we lived there until I was about 13, and then moved to Florida in the middle of 7th grade. And I've been here practically ever since. I have a twin brother. It's basically just me and him. And yeah, that's about it.
I didn't know you had a twin brother, Justine.
Yeah, I do.
In fact, for
We
me.
don't really look like twins, though. We just look like regular siblings.
What's his laugh like?
His life is pretty simple. He's a simple guy.
No, his laugh. His laugh.
Oh,
I don't care about his life.
He said life. I'm like, what? My bad. His laugh is not nearly as vibrant and jovial as mine.
I didn't think so.
Justine, what was life kind of growing up for you? Because you have congenital limb difference, right? So what was your life kind of as a kid, kind of growing up?
Right. So I was born with 2 short arms with only 2 fingers on each hand. When we lived in Illinois, we were in a pretty small town, so basically everybody knew me. So I didn't really get bullied or anything at school. It was mostly like whenever we would go out in public or stores, and random people would come up or say weird things, or sometimes call me names and stare at me and whatnot. And the most popular nickname is T-Rex for obvious reasons. But I think because I grew up more in the 90s and I was kind of the only kid in my school that was different, it was a lot harder, I feel like, to fit in and to gain that self-confidence than it is today, because limb differences and amputations and that sort of thing is a lot more accepted, I feel like, in today's world, because it's all over the media and in movies and whatnot. And I feel like there's a lot more resources nowadays than when I was a kid. I mean, we didn't have any sort of Camp No Limits or support groups and things like that, mostly because there wasn't internet yet or anything like that. At least not that I knew of any camps or anything. So I kind of had to navigate that adolescent part of my life by myself. And that was really hard because, like I said, when you're in that alone, it's hard to gain that self-confidence. So when I was little, I used to, mind you, like I said, I lived in Florida, so it's very hot. I used to never wear shorts. I would go everywhere in jeans, and I'd wear long sleeve t-shirts, and I would even wear this stupid vest that when we would go out in public, I would take it off and try to hide my arms with it, because I was just so self-conscious about my body at the time. So it wasn't really until high school and early college when I really started to come out of my shell and start to try new things. And then I started to realize that there weren't nearly as many people staring as I thought that there were. And little by little, I would start to gain confidence and start to want to try new things. And eventually, you know, one step at a time, you gain your self-confidence. And I am a completely different person now than I was at the time.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you keep going. Yeah.
Oh. I was just gonna say I really like to try new things now, and I love answering questions or talking about my differences now. And before, I didn't even want to talk about anything or answer any questions.
It's so funny, Justine, because like since I've known you for the past few years, you come across as so outgoing and confident. And it's funny that like you're saying in our own heads growing up, we're so self-conscious about other people staring at us and everything, but really, like most people don't even care or give a
right. Well, and when you're a young teenager and adolescent, all you want to do is fit in, you know.
Right.
Especially more back then, like I said, it wasn't as accepted. But yeah, I feel like as I got older and I started, ultimately, once I started meeting other amputees and people with limb differences, that's when I thought, oh, wow, you know, maybe I can do what they're doing. And I was introduced to adaptive sports, and I fell in love with that because I didn't think I could do anything as a kid. I didn't want to try anything because I was afraid I would fall or embarrass myself somehow, you know. um, but once I was introduced to adaptive sports, the first one I tried was rock climbing, and it was so much fun. And after that, I was just like, wow, what else can I do? What else is there out there? And that's honestly, ultimately what led me to Camp No Limits. Just getting myself out there and experiencing life, you know, not just
Well,
being afraid.
I think that that's such a good point too, because I think, and I've made this point a lot to parents and also just people when I'm talking in general of how excited I am to sort of see this next generation of kids with limb difference, because those of us that are a little bit older, you're right, we didn't have the community. I mean, limb differences as a term, I don't know, it has existed for very long. You know what I'm saying? So,
Right.
so I think it is kind of interesting how, at least, you know, it's very similar to, I think, my personal experience. I certainly I put myself out there, but I had no other role models. And there were a lot of things I probably was afraid to try to do because I hadn't seen it represented. And where, you know, kids today are seeing someone like them or someone with another limb difference accomplishing amazing things. So when someone tells them you can't do that, then I think they have the actual experience to go back and say, no, you're lying. I can totally do that. You know?
Right.
So
Right.
That's what's so cool about us all being connected at Camp No Limits is like we didn't have that person to look up to when we were younger. Now that we're older, but now we could be that role model to these kids that we wish we had. You know?
Exactly. And I think that brings almost, it makes it almost more special for us too, is now because we didn't have that as children and we wanted that, now we can share our experiences with these kids and hopefully make their lives a little bit easier than ours was growing up, because they are more accepted and they do have that support and that community. It's so important.
Yeah.
Totally. And Justine, so you kind of pick up where you sort of were talking as you kind of came in, as you got into your later teens, early adulthood, you started being more confident, being more out there. Did some of that confidence sort of lead you to kind of what you wanted to do in school, what you wanted to study? Did that just sort of, how did that play into sort of the path that you sort of found for yourself?
Yes. Sorry. Once I started coming out of my shell, I feel like I just turned into a completely different person. Because it's like I didn't know myself before because I didn't do anything. You know, I didn't try anything new and challenge myself. So whenever I started immersing myself more in the limb different community, I realized that, you know, I was happiest when I was around other people like me, and I was either helping them or, you know, just being around people and sharing life experiences with one another. And I've been around prosthetics my entire life because I'm also an above the knee amputee. And so also due to congenital birth defects. So I've been in and out of prosthetics offices my entire life. And I always just loved the rapport that I would have with my prosthetists growing up. I was very lucky in having ones that I actually enjoyed going to. And I feel like because of those experiences and then realizing how much I enjoyed talking about my experiences and helping in any way that I can, that ultimately led me to wanting to become a prosthetist or at least work somewhere in that field. And yes, because I was trying new things and challenging myself and learned that I liked to challenge myself, I felt like, yes, this career path would be very challenging because it's obviously very hands-on. But, you know, I had talked to a lot of people within the field about people work together, and there's always a way to, find a way to do it within the job. So I figured that would be excellent. And I'm so glad that I went to school for it. I learned a lot about myself and the industry and how things are made. And I've met some amazing people along the way. And it's what's great about prosthetic school, and I guess any school in general where you're learning new things, is for me, I had to learn to adapt on the spot a lot of times. And that was very challenging for me. But like I said, I also learned to be more creative and more, I feel like it made me more independent as far as figuring things out on my own, which is also important for all kids with limb differences.
Yeah, absolutely.
Adapt. It's what we do. I think that's sort of like, even in like the time that we're in, it's like, I think that, I talk about that a lot. I think we're all used to that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
What are ways, Justine, because you talked about having to adapt on the spot, and that's something that you've always had to do. How do you deal with setbacks? How do you deal with those things that kind of pop up in your life?
Well, I think the biggest thing to remember when you're learning to do things on your own or adapt to things, that there's going to be trial and error for a lot of things. A lot of times you're not going to be able to figure it out right away, and you might have to try, different things until you get it right, or until you learn how to do it independently. And that's okay, because ultimately at the end of the day, you want to learn how to be as independent as possible and do whatever it is that you want to accomplish in life. And, if it takes you a little bit longer to figure that out than most people, then that's fine. I told you I have a twin brother, right? So he has normal limbs. So when I was younger, I used to watch him and figure out what he was doing, and then by watching him and seeing how he did things, I could then adapt it in the way that I could do it. So again, that's another great thing for having a community and Camp No Limits, is that the people who have navigated some of these harder things can also help kids learn how to adapt to the things that they're having issues with learning on their own. But I think, like I said, the most important thing, I think, is trial and error, and you just got to stay, you got to stay determined to learn whatever it is that you want to learn how to do.
Absolutely.
You talked a lot about like being a kid and then kind of growing up and the change of confidence you had. Would you have any, like, what advice would you give yourself as that kind of young, insecure kid, right now, if you could talk to that person?
If I could talk to a younger Justine, I would tell her that it doesn't matter what other people are saying or thinking about you, to just live your life. I spent half of my life on the sidelines as a wallflower, and I kind of robbed myself of my childhood because of that, because I was too afraid, but it was mostly in my head. So I guess I would just say to have fun and stop being afraid of everything. And the worst that'll happen is if you try something and you don't like it, then you don't have to do it again. But if you don't do the things that you want to try, you'll just never know. What else would I say?
Yes.
Yes. I would also say that you're not alone, and that there are a lot of people just like you and that are going through the same hardships as you. And, being together and talking about all these things together makes all of us better people. And it just increases that self-confidence, and, you, as you gain the community and meet people that you didn't know before. When I was a kid, I also didn't really want to meet other people with disabilities, because I I didn't know that there were any other ones, you know, any other kids like me. Whenever like my prosthetist or whatever would try to introduce me to other people, they were always older. So I didn't feel like I had anything in common with them, and they didn't really help me feel better. But now I feel like I could have used their guidance and their advice and all that as a younger kid. Maybe I would have come out of my shell a lot sooner. So
Sure.
that's
It's
true,
almost
but
like you don't wanna-
but I do think it's. I'm sorry, Alex. Go ahead.
No, David, please.
Oh, thank you. No, but I was just going to say it's such a good, interesting point because we are like these old people, and as mentors, and I think that is an important part of our camp, and I think it's important that we see our adult mentors with limb difference and limb loss out there and just sort of participating in the life of camp. We're from such diverse backgrounds where we have folks doing such a wide variety of different sort of jobs and living life and in such cool different ways. And I do think there is something a little bit to that. I think it's hard when you are a kid and you bring in all these like old people and you're like, what do I have in common with these old people? I do think it's a nice opportunity to meet when you meet someone that's a contemporary, right? And I think that's one of the great things about camp or other organizations and the other community. In a way, it's just like community, right? This community that's been built that you begin to see like, hey, I'm not the only one out there. And I think that's important that we see like other people are adapting. And so the ways that we innately adapt to do things, because those of us who were born like this, or those of us that end up through either trauma or illness with limb difference, we all just do that naturally. We begin to do it naturally. But it's sort of quiet. I know I remember seeing someone like me having success for the first time or doing something.
Mm-hmm.
It just was the knowledge that what I'm doing is right. You know what I mean? It's putting me on the right track. So I think the other question, Justine, is what do you do with, and this is, I'm sure different between now and when you were a kid, but when questions come up, because questions are always going to pop up because, you're not, number one, you're not hiding in the vest anymore. You're not wearing corduroy pants when it's 98 degrees.
Even at the beach. Oh my gosh. Yes, I used to do that.
Right. So what do you do with that when those questions come up? Because they always do.
Well, now I actually really enjoy when people ask me questions. In fact, I would rather them come up and ask me questions and then just sit there and stare or just sit there and wonder, Same thing with being out in public and, little kids come up and ask questions or stare or something, and the parents will like shush them and take them away. No, I would rather them bring their child over and so that I can educate them. Because like I said, today it's more of like a cool thing to be different because it's in the media and in the movies, and you see all these guys or women in movies that are doing awesome things who have prosthetic limbs or limb differences. And I think kids have a different perspective of that sort of thing nowadays than when we were younger. When we were younger, it's more about being normal and fitting in, and anybody who was different was gross. So when I was a kid and that was more of the mindset, it's like I almost wanted to pretend that I wasn't different in a way. It kind of sounds weird, but whenever somebody would come up to me or stare and laugh, I would just get really upset. I didn't want to talk to them at all. And so usually my parents or whoever I was with would end up speaking for me and until I found that voice, because it's really hard to answer questions or, speak up about things when you don't even like yourself at that point. And I think everybody anyway has to learn how to love themselves and accept themselves, but especially us with limb differences and amputations, feel like we have that extra hurdle that we have to get over, especially if we're children, because we just don't have that. We don't have that mindset as, you know, we build when we're teenagers and adults, that, you know, it doesn't matter what other people think.
Yeah.
So.
Well said.
I think that leads right into that sort of question. Maybe that's what you would say. Like, in the last couple minutes we have, advice that you would give to our campers, their families, folks that might be watching this Totally Not a Podcast.
Well, they're already doing a great job if they're involved in camp. Because I guess the biggest advice would be to use that community that you have and the support, because you're not alone. And I'm positive that whatever these kids are concerned about or having a hard time with or trying to figure out, we have all been through that. And, you know, if we can make someone feel better, or, you know, just feel a little at ease about something, or help them figure something out, use that. Because we didn't have that when we were younger. We had to navigate those roads ourselves. You know, also just don't be afraid to be yourself. You know, you only have your one body and you only have this one life, and don't waste it hiding and being ashamed of yourself.
Absolutely.
You know?
I feel so pumped.
I am pumped too. We have like a little less than a minute. Justine, thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Thanks for having me.
Love you, Justine.
We have a quick shout out to one more fake sponsor. Alex, can you just do that real fast?
Absolutely. Maybe I'll just ask you guys, do you guys ever have trouble sleeping?
Absolutely, sometimes.
You ever have trouble sleeping? Maybe you're bunking up with a friend in a room or a cabin or like a camping trip like we do at Camp No Limits, and you just can't sleep because your friend is snoring louder than a hippo fart. All right, well, sleep bad no more. Sleep bad no more, because we got Rob Shulman's personalized Camp No Limits soft jelly earbuds. With these earbuds, you'll sleep like a baby in here. Zip, zero, nada. You know what we mean. So call now for 50% off your first pair of Rob Shulman's personalized Camp No Limits soft jelly earbuds today.
Yes.
Thank you,
I need some of those.
Justine Clifton, thank you for joining us. Alex Barone, it's always a pleasure. This is David and Alex, Totally Rad Podcast that is totally not a podcast. All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Do a little dancing. Dun, 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 dun. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.
See you next
Bye-bye.
time, guys.